This week, me and Trent are heading down to Georgia to do a little thermal hunting. And some of it, well, it may surprise you. Well, one of the reasons we headed down to Georgia is our friend Chet has some farmers that he's trying to help out. And the Georgia DNR, along with the Department of Agriculture in Georgia, have a pretty amazing program that Hunters for the Hungry is also helping out with. It's to help alleviate damage on crop fields, but it's also to help put great meat, organic, healthy, great meat in the hands of people that could really use it. Well, me and Trent rolled down to Georgia with a couple of ATN thermal binoculars, as well as an ATN Thor 5 thermal scopes. Well, the deer in certain areas in Georgia have become so destructive on some of these agriculture fields that it's literally costing hundreds of millions of dollars around the state. So they came up with a plan to not hurt the deer herd, but this program gave farmers in Georgia the option to get these deer out of their fields and stop some of the huge economic impact that they're causing to agriculture in the state of Georgia. And it also helped out people that could utilize some healthy, good venison. Well, it's pretty cool to be slipping around with our buddy Chet and be scanning with thermal binoculars and videoing through thermal scopes. Watching Chet set up and find some of these deer was pretty amazing. But literally, we headed right to some of the agriculture fields, and that's where the deer were causing the problems. Well, the great thing was, once we fired a shot, you could see the deer scattered, and that's exactly what this program is about. There was one deer taken, but the other deer left the field and saved the farmer literally thousands of dollars in one night.
Nice shot. Dude, how cool is this? I can't believe the number of deer in this guy's ag field.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
We always have a problem with them, and luckily DNR lets us come out and do this to kind of manage the herd a little bit.
But they have a setup where you can donate this meat to needy families, take it to a processor, and you don't even have to pay for it, right?
Right.
We're just gonna bring this deer,
Call him, drop it off. He takes care of the rest.
and the thing is, one deer, isn't gonna hurt an ag field, but when you've got 50 or 100 of them,
Yeah, no, it makes a big difference. You can go in and see, and you can walk around the edge of the field and see the damage they do when they sit there all night and just eat.
and what we're doing, and one thing that's neat about this program is we're not hurting the deer herd. All they're doing is, like you mentioned earlier, is just taking a few here, a few there, and what happens is the deer learn it's not a safe place to eat. They can't come here at night, and they'll move on, they'll go out to the natural browse, and they'll stop damaging the ag fields. But pretty dang neat deal. This is the Stag Arms Pursuit Series, and this is 6.5 Creedmoor topped with an ATN. This is the brand new Thor 5, and that's a pretty slick setup, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's clear, got a great image. See the reticle pretty well.
Good shooting.
Oh, thanks.
That's pretty fun.
go.
And we got some neat meat.
Let's go find some more.
All right.
The other neat thing is looking through the thermal scopes, you could see the bucks from the does. And since does are the only ones that are legal, you could quickly identify the difference between a buck and a doe looking through the thermal scope.
Another beautiful deer, and that is awesome. But you can see this is a peanut field, and you can see even right here next to where she was standing, I mean, these are all chewed down. I mean, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, this is one of the fields that they've had to replant, and you can see even replanting how sparse it is, and it grew back.
Unbelievable. All right, another deer, the ATN Thermal Thor 5, chalked up another one. That's awesome. All right, get this one to the processor, huh?
I actually got a chance to talk to one of the local farmers about the massive amount of damage these deer are doing to some of their crops, and then the economic impact of that as it scatters out throughout the community. But what was interesting, and something I did not know, is that a cotton plant, once a deer nips it as it's growing up, it won't regenerate. That cotton plant is dead. And if a deer goes down the row, which they commonly do, and just keeps taking a bite of every cotton plant, you can decimate a field in just a little bit of time. And we saw that damage every night we went out. Well, I was excited to get a chance to talk to one of the local farmers about all the damage that he's had to deal with.
I've got farms that I've had to walk away from that are no longer profitable because the deer damage was to the point that I was completely decimated. I've had farms that the damage was not that bad. You know, it kind of varies on the area, but when it's bad, and the margins are so tight now that we can't lose 1 and 2 and 5 and 10%. We just don't have the margin of error to overcome it. The problem with a cotton plant is it has a bud, and deer like that tender growth, and they like to bite the bud, just nip the bud out of it. And once they nip the bud out of it, the plant dies, it's dead. I mean, it's a little small mouthful, a little morsel, and they go on to the next one, and they can walk through a field. You get 10, 15, 30, 50 deer going through a field, and every time they take a bite, that's one plant gone. And in the middle of the night, it's many plants.
You know, I also got a chance to talk to Dominic from the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and he talked to me about how serious they take managing both those resources, not only agriculture, but also the deer population, and what a delicate balance that is. And basically, they're literally just trying to get these deer out of the fields and push them back to natural browse. So you work for the Department of Ag, you're also a hunter. Talk to me a little bit about this program, because I am sure that when people saw those crosshairs cross a white-tailed doe and I shoot at night, there was probably people on the phone going, they just poached a deer and I saw it on the show. Right. Let's talk a little bit about this program, because I think it's a really neat program, and I hope that other states will kind of follow suit.
So when the commissioner was elected in 2022 and sworn in 23, we realized very quickly that one of our top priorities is going to have to be crop deprivation of white-tailed deer. Our Georgia Farm Bureau and President Tom McCall and his team had done a lot of surveys and research on this. So that became one of our top 5 initiatives and our priorities as a new commissioner. Well, then we started combining that with feral hogs and all the damage they do. But the farmers now, the input cost for farmers now is up over the last 5 to 10 years, 300% on what it takes to plant a crop. And so when you take crop deprivation on white-tailed deer in certain regions especially, and they eat into that farmer's profit margin just 2%, and we use that number conservatively, it's more than that. If they just eat into that crop 2% statewide, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Deer and feral hogs alone is somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million worth of damage each year. That's more than tornadoes and hurricanes and natural disasters combined.
In the state of Georgia.
In the state of Georgia. And so it's the equivalent of a hurricane in the agriculture industry every single year. And when you say hurricane around farmers, especially cotton farmers, they get really nervous, right? Because that is a problem. But I say that, and you're talking about, of that $85 billion, just peanuts alone, and the 750 to 800,000 acres, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Cotton, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. And so our responsibility as a department is to make sure that we're helping that farmer to balance and protect that input cost, so that whatever the market decides, cotton right now is as low as it's been since 1977. Farmers in Georgia will sell cotton this year for the same price that farmers sold cotton for in 1977. Input cost up 300%. So if we can cut that at all, then we've helped the bottom line of the farmer and the producer in this state.
Talk to me about what percentage of the country's peanuts Georgia grows.
So Georgia is not just the biggest in peanuts. Georgia is peanuts in the United States of America for the most part. We grow around 1.5 to 1.7 million tons of peanuts every year. In 2023, we had 770,000 acres of peanuts, 1.5 million tons. The next closest state is around 300,000 tons. But a peanut damage is different, because the peanuts that are pegged down, growing in the dirt, need the foliage on top to put the nutrients down to the nut and help it to fill out and get a good grade and make sure the farmer gets his money's worth. So you may turn those peanuts up on one that's got foliage damage on the top, and there might not be a nut on it. So a farmer has invested thousands of dollars in inverting the peanut, letting it dry, harvesting, running all of that equipment, and may end up with 500 pounds to the acre. They need 3,000 to 2 tons, to really be up there in that money. They need that yield under the ground, and unfortunately they can't see it until it's too late.
Wow, because of deer damage.
Because of the deer damage. So we were listening to all of these, and that balance is essential to sustainability, for the future of hunting and fishing, but also the profitability of our producers. And so the commissioner's priority was to help strike that balance, and to do that in collaboration with the University of Georgia Agriculture Extension and the surveys that they do in the counties on the farms, the Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife and Game and Fish, and our state biologist that helps us to track the data on this. So
let's talk a little bit about, the needy families, and the money that not only Department of Ag, but the Georgia DNR, and then Hunters for the Hungry. You guys are all kind of working in conjunction on that program, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of the unique things about venison and the ability to have this deer process to give to needy families is the beef producers are trying to make a living. They're selling that beef out onto the market, or sending that beef to be fed out. Venison is something that's available to be processed. The processor gets paid for the DNR, Department of Agriculture, and the Wildlife Federations. And then that meat goes to a needy family, and it's more nutrient meat. The protein and how lean venison is, honestly, we should eat more of it, whether or not we're needy.
Or
anyway.
not. Yes, sir. It's
Yes,
good.
sir.
It's good stuff. And you're not hurting the beef industry. I had an interesting, it's an interesting thought, because a lot of the families that we're donating, they're not out there buying prime rib or hamburger either. So what's great is it kind of, it's helping everybody out.
I would argue that probably in this upcoming year, which we're in 24 now, we'll spend somewhere between $10 and $15 million combined just to take on the issue of crop deprivation, deer, and feral hog damage. And
That's
so,
unreal.
And we don't hear these stories enough, right? We only hear about the money that may be wasted, or the money that's not being invested with the best return. But this is something that we really believe is a return to the farmers, the producers, the needy families, and to our sustainability for the future.
Well, I had a blast going out and participating in these hunts. But the neatest thing is that literally as soon as the deer were down, we raced them to the processor and donated them to the Hunters for the Hungry program that is working awesome in Georgia right now.
Yeah, that's fun. Nice. And this is what Chet was talking about, and this is also what what David was saying about the damage, on these peanut fields. It's just unbelievable. And again, we're not trying to impact the deer populations. We're just trying to help these guys out. There's too many deer, and they're making a lot of damage. So the deer learn pretty quick, this is a bad place to be. So Chet was showing me, and you see how nice these peanuts look here, and they've even got some browsing, but they're a lot thicker rows. As we get closer where that deer's at, Chet was showing me yesterday.
Yep.
It's not going to be it's not going to be like this, is it?
No, it'll be way more sparse.
That is a big mature doe.
Yes,
And look
sir.
at what she's got in her mouth.
Yeah, she's got peanuts in her mouth.
Mid-meal.
Eating peanuts. Look at that. That deer was eating peanuts just as quick as it could. And you imagine hundreds of deer doing this, and you've got damage, here in Georgia in the tens of millions of dollars. That's pretty incredible. Having the right equipment, we have a Bog Death Grip. This is the Stag Arms. This is a 6.5 Creedmoor. We're shooting Hornady, and we're dropping these deer. They're either dropping in their tracks, or they're, solid lung shots, and they're not going 30 to 50 yards and dropping. So having the right equipment, especially for any type of a hunt, but especially for this, and at night, and as thick as it is in Georgia, if they get out of the field, it makes a big difference. Well, another part of our setup is pretty handy. We've got a Wyoming arm suppressor here. So it's just, one, it's polite. It doesn't disturb, people that are sleeping or some other houses. These are in rural areas, but there's still people that are in houses and, families around. So, of course, at night, we've talked about this a lot, it's even more important to have a safe backdrop.
Yes, sir, 100%.
Scouting it out. And, Chet's done that in the areas that we're actually, taking care of these deer. with Ryan, he knows that country. That's, you know, that's their ranch, so they know exactly about where everything's at. But, you know, I always tell people safety at night is 10 times more important in the daytime because you can't see as well. You want to really make sure of your backstop whenever you're shooting, but especially at night. Yeah. All right, what's kind of neat is Trent noticed on this deer we just shot that the bullet is right here. I'm about to use the outdoor edge to take it out. Look at that perfect expansion on that Hornady. Just perfect. Went all the way through both shoulders and was stuck in the skin on the other side. 6.5 Creedmoor dropped that deer in its tracks.